Hey, welcome to the table. My name is Khalil.
My name is Sean.
And this is a podcast just all about following Jesus in the midst of uncertainty and change. And really, for the first time, right? We're all living life for the first time. And there's so much depth to the Christian faith and different elements and aspects of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And that is what we are exploring and talking about on this podcast. And today we have a special co-host with us, Jeff Gowing. What's up, man?
What's going on, man?
You're a youth pastor, right?
Yes, I'm a youth pastor in Florence, Oregon. It's on the coast, about just an hour west of Eugene.
And you have a wife?
Yeah, I've been married 8 years, and we have a little girl, and she's 3, and she's awesome.
Awesome, man. Super glad to have you. Jeff's going to be on a couple different episodes with us, which is super exciting. We also have another guest with us, right, Sean?
That's correct. We're excited to get to know Jeff Gowing over the next few episodes, and excited to get to know Dr. Garland Owensby, who is all things youth and student ministries at Southwestern Assembly of God University. And one thing you will find out within the first 5 minutes of talking to Garland is that he loves the church. He loves discipleship. He loves utilizing all facets and aspects of life to point people to Jesus and to draw people near to him. And that is something that we found out really quick in talking to him. We're excited to have him with us and to talk about humor and the everyday follower. So thanks for being with us, Garland. We really appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe one thing that everybody who's listening needs to know about you.
All right. Hey, thanks for inviting me to the table. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Good to have you.
So one thing everybody needs to know, I have 3 sons.
Beautiful.
Okay. And that may be like, why are you telling us you have 3 sons? Okay. Because for all you artsy people out there, I ended up having 3 sons, 2 of which are identical twins, 6'3" athletes. And so I'm just saying, man, there's hope. There's hope for your genetics. So.
That's awesome.
Seriously, there was one time they were playing basketball, and when it was done, I was like, "You guys did so well," and they're like, "No, we didn't." I said, "Isn't it great that you have an artsy dad? Because I don't know if you do something wrong." I was excited.
You're all winners for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
All over.
That's awesome, man. So tell us a little bit about your family and where are you from? And
I was born in Delaware, which was the first state, and so I grew up in the Northeast and in Pennsylvania. Actually, was born or grew up in the mushroom capital of the world. So It's the place that makes the most mushrooms.
It's a trophy. That's claim to fame. That's a trophy right there.
But yeah, I've been married for 28 years to the same woman.
Awesome.
So that's been good.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the funny thing is, because my initials are Go, and her initials are T.O., Tiffany Owensby, Go to. So that it sounds really spiritual. You know? And like I said, we've got 3 sons. My oldest is graduated from Texas A&M and is a software engineer. And then I've got another son at Texas Tech and another son at Texas A&M. So
I'm sorry. That's okay. I'm a USC fan. But anyway, we're, as you can tell already, we're excited to laugh together. And laughter has been said, it's been said is medicine. And so in a culture that seems to be filled with rage and hostility and confusion kind of around every corner, what ways have you seen humor break in and bring about healing and unity within our culture?
Now, first of all, you say you're a USC fan?
Yeah.
Now, do they charge to be a fan, or is that just to get in?
See, my problem here is that Sean wants to ask about unity, and the first thing he did was bring division.
I did.
So we just want to reiterate that we're all learners here, and this is going to be a great conversation for everyone.
This conversation is utilizing humor to bring unity. Already.
No.
It's true.
That's awesome.
There are like so many. Here's my deal with humor. If it's America's Funniest Home Video, if it's a funny TikTok, if it's a funny Instagram, I don't care if the person is male or female. I don't care what race they are. I'm not asking about their economics. I just want to see something funny. I just want to hear a funny joke. And I think in that way, like, I don't look at Chris Rock and go, he's a funny black comedian. I just go, he's funny. Right. My wife will sit there and watch Steve Harvey Family Feud videos over and over and over again. And she's not like, he's funny for a black man.
Right.
It's not that. It's just funny is funny. Right. And now we're not ignoring the fact that there are things that are cultural that one person will find funny that someone else won't. But that was happening with Jesus in the parables.
Yeah.
He was telling stuff that he said something to the Pharisees and everybody else is like, oh, and we just don't get it because it's not our time period. So yeah, we can see where humor can bring people together. Now forgive me, I'm not Catholic, but the Pope Francis, he said, when we laugh with each other and not at each other, God's love is present in a special way.
That's good.
And I think that's the thing. If you've ever been on a camp or a retreat and some junior higher passes gas in the van, as awful as that is, everybody starts laughing and all of a sudden it's a combined experience. You have laughed and a year later somebody will go, hey, make him sit by a window and everybody will laugh again. So I think there's nothing like humor that just kind of takes an enormous problem or a situation and kind of just messes it up and makes us smile. Jeff, you said you've been married 8 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Jeff, if you're having an argument with your wife and she's really mad at you, just start making fart noises under your arm. Right?
I never learned that skill. I have to develop it.
There's
arguing
YouTube videos
like in a Mickey Mouse voice, But when we talk about unity in secular standpoints, man, Key and Peele, those guys, their stuff is so good. But here's the difference between that and some of the things that people think are funny that are divisive. Key and Peele aren't coming from a place of arrogance. When they're doing videos on issues that are affecting all of us, it's coming from a place of love, and or at least it seems to be, or a place of reconciliation. Like, look how absurd this is. Can't we come back to some reason and some logic about it, rather than like you'll see some Saturday Night Live skits about politics, and you're like, yeah, we can tell you hate Republicans. We can just tell, With Key and Peele, it's, no, we hate this issue or we hate this injustice. And I think we can all agree on that. And that's what brings the unity. When we're not making fun of people, but we're attacking an issue, or we're just enjoying life.
Yeah.
That's
so good.
Good. I want to ask a little bit, expanding on that, the idea of like Key and Peele being able, sometimes we say comedians get away with talking about stuff that the rest of us can't.
Right.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that their tone maybe is a little bit different, or the heart behind it is different. I just want to ask, how do you think that comedic tone is different than maybe the everyday average citizen, and our tone in the humor that's taken so differently?
It's a good question. One, a big part of their identity is that they are comedic.
Right.
Another part is, if you follow them in other places, they speak out about other issues as well. So it's not like they're just joining the bandwagon. This has been a part of who they are. So I think that's really important. Another thing to consider is, way back in medieval times, the king employed a jester, and the role of the jester was the ability to say what everybody else was thinking, but to do so with impunity. So the king wasn't going to chop his head off because that was his role. And I think that's part of the role of comedians. Billy Wilder, a playwright, he said, if you're going to tell people the truth, be funny or they'll kill you. So I think we've even with our students, being careful about joking with students before you know their story.
That's good.
Knowing what the sensitivities are in the room. It's one of the reasons people, like, I get on people's cases. I'm like, don't say, oh, bummer and Hillary and Agent Orange when talking about politicians. because you don't know who's in your audience.
Mm-hmm.
And there are bigger things in this world than politicians who come and go.
That's good. That's really good. I don't want to skip past, you mentioned a little bit the parables. How there's humor in that. What would be some of the humor inside the scriptures that is your favorite? Like the maybe to the everyday follower, we may not even get it or know it. That you can. We don't notice that you might want to kind of just elevate and bring to light some of those funnier passages.
Have you? There's a movie called "It Happened One Night." It won the Oscar, I think, in like 1939 or something like that, as the best comedy. You ever get a chance, watch it. It's not funny. Okay. And the reason it's not funny is because it's 71 years ago. And part of the humor is he's talking about beating this woman.
Interesting.
Okay. So humor changes, even like Seinfeld. Okay. When part of what made Seinfeld so popular was that it was a type of humor that they hadn't seen before. It was observational humor. You have people that are storytellers. You have people that are one-liners. Back my parents' generation, they loved Henny Youngman. They loved Milton Berle, who could just come and do these one-liner. Okay, so that being said, with scripture, part of the issue is people are watching a movie from 1939 without the context of 1939. So people are reading a story from Jesus without understanding the humor of the first century. The humor of the first century was based in wordplay. So kind of think it, in the same way where Jesus says, "Hey, Peter," and he goes, "Petros, Petra." It's wordplay, but we don't catch it because we're living 2,000 years later. So Jesus will say things like, "Hey, you're looking at the speck in your brother's eye while you have the plank in your own eye." And we interpret that, or we read it as Jesus is just ticked off and he is angry and he's dialed it up to 11. And he is just blasting these people.
Right.
Well, is it possible? I mean, could you see Jesus like taking his arm, putting it on the side of his head, and he goes, "And you got this plank," and he swings around and hits Judas in the head, and the other disciples are ducking. We go, "Well, no, because Jesus was serious." Well, there are 700 examples in the New Testament of wordplay. 700 times that Jesus is funny. He's using irony. He's using metaphors. He's using this wordplay. But again, I think as Pentecostals, we read the prophets and we read the words of Jesus as if the bottom line is neutral emotion or it's rage. We never think of Jesus having these light moments or being funny in how he speaks to people. So one of the problems too is if you just do a word search for the word laugh, but you're going to find laughter in not so good terms, like derision or making fun of people, and Jesus said, "Oh, the child is just asleep," and they laughed. Okay, well, it's not that laughter is always a bad thing. It's understanding the first century idea of what laughter is or what was funny to them.
Yeah.
So let me just kind of shift gears here a little bit and just ask, how do we as Christians learn to lighten up?
That's good.
Well, and I would say in that, do we need to?
Yeah.
Do we need to lighten up?
Ooh, that's good.
Okay.
You have permission to speak.
So, Sean, your wife is upset at you.
Sometimes.
And you look at her and you tell her, "Calm down."
Okay.
Okay, so we've got people that are very upset. And I think if we look at them going, "Hey, lighten up," they're not going to go along. So I think some of it is the way that we lead. The youth pastor that was at the church before me, the students had TP'd his house, and they said when he pulled up, he raged, and went off on the kids. Well, my wife and I, we had been there a year. We bought a house for the first time. We pull up, there is TP there, but the students are there. There's TP. They put forks and knives in the, the plastic ones in the lawn.
Yeah.
And knowing the story, I just looked at my wife and I said, whatever you do, smile. It's just paper. It's just plastic, and that was such a turning point because the students were testing, how is this person going to respond when we just want to have fun? And for them, it was an act of love. So yeah, you can't tell people to lighten up, but you can lead in a way that says, I don't take myself that seriously. And I can laugh at my own faults and I can poke fun at myself.
So, Garland, what you're talking, I'll put words in your mouth. You're welcome. We're talking about
We're not
flipping.
even married.
We're talking about flipping the narrative here. So, what does it look like to flip the narrative, to flip the story from one of my first initial reaction is rage, is offense, is insecurity or arrogance, to one of, you know what, I can absorb this in a way that there's a better response. And I know I'm talking in really general terms, but I love that you're talking about the story here. And I think we need to drill into it.
Well, how do I put this? Okay, so I go to counseling, and my counselor was like, hey, how are you doing with the whole COVID thing? And I just said, oh, I'm fine. She goes, you're not worried? You're not stressed out? You're not anxious about it? I'm like, no. She goes, why? I said, well, it's kind of like when I get to the airport, things are out of my control. And I know that I'm not the only one being affected by this. So when I take the narrative away from my own ego and say, you know what? This is happening to lots of other people. It kind of diminishes that rage or that personal offense inside of me. Is that making sense? That I realize I'm not the only one being inconvenienced, and it's not going to do any good for me to rage at the gate attendant. And this other guy raging at her, it's not doing him any good. And so I've got a choice in this. So whether it's that someone offends me or that something's happened to me or I'm embarrassed. Listen, my father-in-law, three times in the classroom, his fly was down. Okay.
Unfortunate.
The first time was unintentional, but I mean, you just go, okay, raise your hand if your zipper has never been down in public.
I don't know.
No one told me.
It happens to all of us. All of us have had some experience. And so, you have a choice in life to walk in anger and rage, which lead to unforgiveness, or to walk in this way that says, you know what, life is short. And all this pain, all this embarrassment, it's going to be over. And so we can walk in joy, not because life is difficult, but because we know life will not always be difficult.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. That's the hope of Christianity, or at least that perspective too. That's a really good thought there.
Yeah, I think I hope people listening would maybe realize that on one level right now you're touching on identity, right? Like where our identity comes from affects what kind of humor we can receive and what we can't. So you mentioned the word ego. I think at one point you mentioned having, responding with outrage sometimes can be thinking we have to defend ourselves, right? Really, if our you at the airport, you're realizing that this isn't a personal attack against you. This is just the world. And in some ways, in a self-centric culture, we can forget to get outside of ourselves a little bit. And one of the things I've noticed in my own life that's helped with my humor is learning that I don't need to defend myself. My identity is secure in Jesus. The words other people say towards me or about me don't actually affect who I am, right? In the eyes of God and hopefully in my own eyes. So something about finding our identity in God even allows us to maybe soften up and receive more humor in the world because we don't have to fight so much.
One of the great things about camp is youth pastors and leaders, adult leaders, coming and saying, I'll make a fool of myself this week.
Yeah.
You know, you want to do a goofy skit, you know, you want to pie me in the face, whatever. And what we're saying to people is, what happens to me doesn't define me. And my reaction to these things are a reflection of who I think I am in Christ. And so if my only hope is in my self-made identity, then I'm going to be in trouble, and I'm going to be offended by everything, and I'm going to get mad because I'm the only one defending me. But if I'm in Christ, man, you can make fun of me, you know, roast me, whatever. I mean, I start classes sometimes and I just go, hey, I'm bald and overweight. I know it. You can't hurt me there. You know, so.
Right.
That's really good about the identity piece there, because I think that in our current culture, there are so many, well, and this isn't new, there are so many things for us to identify as, whether it's a political stance or political party. And it's easy for us even to identify as a, you know, I'm a poor person, or I'm poor, I'm rich, I'm, you know, this ethnicity, that ethnicity. It's easy for us to identify in anything and everything other than Jesus. And so oftentimes, if you poke that identity in any way, and I'm not saying that there's not injustice, obviously there's lots of injustice, and there's things that where we cross the line with humor, which we can get to here in a second. But if those things are our identity, at some point it will crumble under the weight of our expectations.
Yeah. Well, I think I would even say with that identity piece, I don't remember if we've talked about this prior, if it's come up, but whatever your identity is in, at some point will trigger a fight or flight reflex when that thing is put on the spot. So if it's politics, if your identity is in a political party, when someone comes against that, there's a fight that has to take place, right? Because your identity is there. If that's lost, who are you? And it can happen with jobs, it can happen with social status, with really anything. Yeah. So I think that Jesus piece is crucial.
Here's the cool thing. If your identity is wrapped up in something earthly, then you'll end up defending things that are indefensible just for the sake of preserving your identity, right? True. And I mean, we're seeing this everywhere. I mean, this is Democrat, Republican, because I mean, the joke is kind of like, okay, if a Democrat said the sky is blue, the Republicans would say, no, it's not, it's green. And, you know, and then if a Republican said the sky is green, they go, no, it's not, or grass is green, no, it's not. Right. And it's like disagreeing just to disagree only says my identity with this group is so much more important than the unity in Christ.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate a sensitive culture with our humor? You know, how do you do that as someone that's funny, obviously? Because some of us maybe aren't just naturally funny like that. So
yeah. It's an art, right? You may not end up being Rembrandt, but you can draw a stick figure. You know, so I always tell people with comedians, it's about finding your voice. And I think preachers have to find their voice, and all of us find our voice. People don't go to my Facebook page to read my political views. They just don't, right? And it's not something I do, and that's okay. That's my identity. So I think finding your voice. You know, I met a guy this morning, single guy, and he starts telling me jokes. And I'm like, these are dad jokes. He goes, yeah. I said, do you have any kids? And he goes, no. I said, well, you're getting prepared for it. And if you're a youth pastor and you go, all I do is dad jokes, that's great. That's great. You don't have to be anybody but that. My former student is an awesome storyteller. I'm not really that good of a storyteller when it comes to humor. I'm an absurdist. You know, I think of things and I go, okay, wouldn't it be funny if, you know, whatever. But everybody's just a little bit different. So I think one of the things is working on it. I will tell you this, anybody that speaks publicly, the most dangerous thing you can do is improv. Just don't do it. Because you're going to say it wrong. It's going to come out the wrong way. In this culture, it's going to be taken the wrong way. Yeah. So if you ever saw one of my sermons, I literally have joke and I write it out so that I know exactly what I want to say and how I want to say it. So I think finding your voice, not trying to be somebody that you're not, you know, because again, you don't go to Chick-fil-A on a Sunday and ask for a Whopper. Right? Just find it. So yeah, practice your humor, being intentional about where you say things and when you say things. I felt very comfortable making observations about COVID, never about people, but a lot of them were things about myself, about why it's great that I'm wearing a mask or, things like that. But kind of reading the room too. Like for me right now, it doesn't matter if I find something funny or not. I'm not going to say anything that's remotely humorous about current race relations. I'm just not going to do it.
Situational awareness. Yeah.
Because it's either going to be misunderstood, misinterpreted, or met with resistance. And so I'm like, you know what? My voice doesn't need to be heard right now. Chris Rock needs to be heard. Key and Peele need to be heard. So there are plenty of people who can have that voice because that's what they're known for when it comes to humor. That's not my place. But I think thinking about the assumptions you make about the people in your audience, and I know pastors, this is just tough because you make an assumption that everybody in the audience agrees with your perspective or your point of view. But that may not be true. And in the same way, we're standing in front of students and we don't know what their struggles with sexuality and their struggles with gender identity are. And you say something flippant and offhand that's you think is funny, but it's really offensive and has put a speed bump between them and hearing the gospel.
That's important.
I'm trying to figure out what to focus on because there were a couple different things that were in there. I'll just take a glance at the fact that you said there are scenarios where you don't need to be heard right then, or you're not the voice for that. I think that speaks really culturally where we all think we have something to say or we need to speak up. And what I just hear in that is there are some times where we don't need to, and I don't know. I just wanted to touch on that because it's very easy to think we all need to or have something to say all the time.
Well, and Khalil, part of this is if you were in my classroom, we would be talking about these issues, but I have a relationship there. So my Facebook, my social media isn't the place where I present myself talking about deep issues. I present myself there in a funny manner. Everything's funny. Everything's about my family. That's it. Yeah. Why? Well, because I feel like the solution to a lot of our big problems aren't going to be solved by me making a post. It's going to be by sitting at the table there. I worked in the name of the podcast.
Thank you.
Yes, that's awesome.
But I mean, seriously, isn't it this? I mean, they talk about levels of intimacy and communication, and number one is face to face.
Yeah.
Right. And the worst is social media. But how are we all getting our opinion out there? No. So I think the face to face conversations, regardless of the topic, that's the way to go.
Well, and you're right, and it just blows up, and the whole reason why we named this podcast Welcome to the Table is because it is the art of listening and receiving and responding in a manner that is healthy and constructive, even in the midst of disagreement, or in the midst of misunderstanding. When I'm misunderstood at the table, face to face with people who have different sides or viewpoints on things, I can work through those disagreements and those misunderstandings in a way that draws me closer to Jesus and draws me closer to unity. And at the table, we can laugh. We can laugh and not be, and you get, every once in a while you get the person that would, you slam your hands on the table and you leave. That's not the norm though, in one sense. Even in a culture where the climate is very shaky and there's a lot of hostility, it's still you're speaking to that table metaphor, and I just love that.
While you were talking, I was thinking about just whether or not our humor is constructive as well, and I thought about the scripture that says, life and death is in the tongue, or, you know, using our words for building up, not tearing people down. And before we were recording, you were kind of downloading a little bit about shock humor. And I was wondering if you would be willing to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, the mistake some people make is, like, if you were to walk up to a preacher and go, hey, you know that joke you told, it was offensive, and the response is, hey, it got a laugh. Well, that's saying, you know what? The ends justify the means. And the thing I'll tell you is clapping is voluntary, laughter is involuntary. Okay? So if you say something that's terrible and awful and evil, I have to go, huh, and intentionally clap. But, like, right now, if I were to say something incredibly offensive, like if I told you a dirty joke right now, probably you go, ha, because laughter is shock, right? It's that involuntary reaction. That's why when somebody goes, ooh, let me tell you something funny. Okay, well, you're conditioned. Okay, I need to laugh at the end of this because you told me it was funny. And so we just got to be careful thinking that saying something shocking or saying something vulgar just because it gets a laugh means that it's funny, and it doesn't. Right. So remember, we all laugh at things we shouldn't laugh at. That's involuntary laughter. It's what you applaud. That's where we get into our danger area. So yeah, it's just watching what. Now, I will say this, Khalil, I don't know if you're married or not, but
I'm not.
You're not.
So if you have a young lady that you're in one of your classes or whatever,
thank you for putting this public.
Feeling called to the Northwest.
Sorry,
feels called to the Northwest.
She feels called this area.
Perhaps you can invite her to the table.
It's a whole nother podcast episode.
Well, I was just shocked. I made the assumption. I looked at you, Khalil, and I was like, wow.
I appreciate that.
This is awesome.
Garland, I appreciate that, but I'm not available for you right now. So
right now,
wait, scratch that, cut that out.
The later, baby.
That's what. Whenever somebody goes, "Can I get your advice on being single in ministry?" I'm like, "Hey, take a look. Did you think this was going to last?" I've never been single in ministry. Oh yeah. So this is where your spouse or just having a trusted friend can help. I remember sometimes, and I get to I'm speaking in front of students, and I just pause, and my wife looks at me, and her eyes get wide, and she's like, "No." She knows I just thought of something funny, and she's like, "No." So this is where having somebody trusted, and there are times that I've told my wife a joke, and I'll go, "Hey, listen, I want to tell you this. You can never repeat it." And I'll tell her, and she goes, "Oh, yeah, that's clever." And what it is it's I find the process of how I got there clever, but it's not something I agree with. It's almost like, if you're listening to satanic metal, you can go, "That guy's a good guitar player." You don't have to embrace the music. It's kind of like people love Robin Williams, but if you've ever heard his stand-up, stand-up was filthy.
Yeah.
Raunchy.
But his process, you could appreciate.
Certainly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
certainly.
Sure.
Yeah.
So having a spouse or somebody that you trust, that you could kind of vent and go, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking." They go, "No, don't say it that way," or "Hey, never say that."
Right. Yeah. So, as we kind of draw to a conclusion a little bit, we've talked about a lot of different facets of laughter and humor and everything. But that 17-year-old, that young adult, that single mom or single dad, or the small business owner, everyday follower of Jesus, how can we bring hope and healing via laughter or via humor, through humor, especially in our current climate?
At the core of laughter is joy. Okay? At the core of godly laughter is joy, because we're told we don't rejoice in suffering. We don't rejoice when our enemy is hurt. And so what I can do is I can say, all right, in my business, in that transaction, as I'm a cashier or I'm just buying something, how can I bring some joy to this person? There's sometimes I was at Target exchanging something, And I just looked at the cashier and I just said, hey, are people treating you well? People being nice to you? And if she says no, I go, this is my opportunity to be nice, So I think the joy, the smile, the attitude that we bring is the beginning of laughter. Because if people realize we're people that bring joy to our home, to our business, to our church, that's the witness that says, I can relax around you and know that whatever you say, your intentions are coming out of a love for me, not out of a hatred toward me or my position. So I want people, after they've hung out with me, to feel better about who they are, and have no thinking that, man, Garland's going to talk about me behind my back, or his real opinion of me is this. So I think for all of us, every day, baseline, bring some joy.
And isn't that bringing the kingdom to the world?
Yeah. See, here's a C.S. Lewis quote. The serious business of heaven is joy.
So good.
That's good.
That's great.
That's really good.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. And I think timely and needed, too.
Absolutely.
So,
speaking about timely and needed, I think you need to have a conversation with a certain woman.
Are you a fortune cookie?
No.
That felt like something I would open up.
That is awesome.
Well, this has been really great. I think it's super timely as well. As we're wrapping up, Jeff Gowing, what do the listeners need to do?
Right now, they need to hit the subscribe button and give a 5-star review. Come on, these guys are working hard. This is great content. Just, put a smile on their faces. Like,
bring joy.
Bring joy. Like, start the process there. It's the beginning of laughter.
The funniest thing you could do is give us a 5-star review right now. And it would crack us up. So, as we're wrapping up, I'm challenged and encouraged in the idea that humor can bring unity. I think about the different perspectives and the diversity of cultures and backgrounds and ethnicities in our world. What a gift and a treat that is. But maybe this week and in the coming future, you listening right now could invite someone to your table, someone of a different perspective, a different background. You could break bread and laugh together and maybe use that as a force of uniting and unifying our world. We know we need it as followers of Jesus. It's what we're called to do, bringing the kingdom to earth. And as we talked about today, it's something that Jesus did on this earth. So invite someone to your table. Until next time, thanks for joining us.